I held my father's gaze across the kitchen table and finally said what I had been holding in for years. If I hear one more comment from your wife about my money, there will be no more polite discussions. I will personally make it clear where she stands and why my money is not hers. The room went quiet. The refrigerator hummed in the background. My stepmother's coffee cup stopped midway to her mouth. My father stared at me like he no longer recognized his own daughter. That was the moment everything shifted. I had grown up thinking families fell apart loudly, raised voices, slammed doors, arguments that neighbors talked about. I never realized they could also fracture quietly, through polite smiles and subtle remarks. A single comment could slide under the table like a blade. My mother died when I was 15. Cancer. Fast, aggressive, unforgiving. One summer, she complained about a dull pain in her side. By winter, I was standing at her grave in borrowed black shoes that hurt my feet while people told me how strong I was. I hated that word. Strong meant you weren't allowed to break down. My father waited just under a year before introducing us to Linda. She wasn't openly cruel. That was the issue. She smiled constantly, spoke gently, touched my arm when she talked as if we were already close. She brought casseroles to neighbors and wine to dinner parties. Everyone liked her. Everyone said how lucky my father was to find happiness again. I was 17 then, old enough to understand, young enough to stay quiet. When I left for basic training 2 years later, my father hugged me tightly and said he was proud. Linda cried just enough to look supportive without ruining her makeup. "We'll take care of everything here," she said. "You focus on your future." I believed her, or maybe I needed to. The military taught me discipline, patience, and control. It taught me to listen more than I spoke, to read the room, to wait. Those lessons would matter later, even if I didn't realize it then. The first comment about my money came during my second year of service. We were on a video call. Linda sat next to my father on the couch, her hand resting lightly on his knee, as if to remind everyone where she belonged. "You must be doing well now," she said with a smile. "With your pay, your housing allowance, all those bonuses?" "I manage," I replied. "Well, it's good to know the family has security." I didn't like how she said family. The remarks continued, always polite, always framed as concern. Had I thought about long-term planning? Wouldn't it be easier if my father helped manage things since I was so young? Money could be overwhelming. Each time, my father nodded quietly and avoided my eyes. When I came home on leave, I noticed changes. My mother's desk was gone, replaced by a sleek glass table. Linda said it made the room feel cleaner. The old filing cabinet where my mom kept everything, insurance papers, birthday cards, had disappeared. When I asked about it, Linda waved it off. "Oh, those old things. We organized them. You don't need to worry." I started worrying immediately. One evening after dinner, Linda served dessert and casually said, "We should talk about consolidating accounts. It just makes sense for families." "My accounts are fine," I said, setting down my fork. She smiled, unbothered. "Just a thought." That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the faint outline on the wall where my mother's calendar once hung. I felt like a visitor in a place that used to be mine. The breaking point didn't come with yelling. It came with paperwork. While I was on duty, I received a bank alert, attempted access, incorrect verification. I froze. No one had my information but me. When I called the bank, they asked if I had authorized anyone to help manage my finances. I hadn't. They mentioned an inquiry linked to my father's address. Something hardened inside me. 2 weeks later, I went home on leave. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't raise my voice. I observed. Linda talked more than usual about bills, investments, how expensive the house was to maintain, how my father deserved to relax after all he'd been through. Then she said it. "Your money is really part of this household anyway." I looked at my father. He didn't correct her. That's when I stood up, walked to the table, and spoke calmly and clearly. "If I hear one more comment from your wife about my money," I said, looking directly at him, "there will be no more polite conversations. I will explain exactly where she stands and why my money is not hers." Linda's smile vanished. My father went pale and nodded slightly, but I already knew understanding wasn't the same as respect, and I was done asking for respect. I didn't expect things to change overnight. People like Linda didn't retreat when confronted. They adjusted. They waited. For a few weeks, things were quiet, too quiet. Linda stopped mentioning money directly and shifted to long stories about stress and responsibility, about holding everything together while I was gone. She never asked outright. She didn't need to. My father grew smaller. I saw it in how he deferred to her, how he checked her reaction before answering simple questions. Once you noticed it, you couldn't ignore it. The military taught me control doesn't always come from force. Often it comes from conditioning. The next test came at a family gathering. Too much food, too much wine, and just enough time for old tensions to surface. Linda laughed lightly and said to my aunt, "With her military income, we're very lucky. Not many families have that kind of stability." I paused mid-bite and looked at my father. He chuckled. "She's doing well." That was the crack. Later, I pulled him aside in the hallway. I told him she crossed a boundary. He said I was reading too much into it. I told him I was reading exactly what was there and asked him once to handle it. He sighed. "You don't understand how complicated things are." That told me everything. A few days later, another bank alert arrived, this time about beneficiary and authorized user information. I didn't confront them. I documented everything. Dates, comments, emails, screenshots. Emotions fade, records don't. Linda misunderstood my silence for surrender. She started making jokes. "Careful," she'd laugh, "or she'll cut us off." People laughed. I didn't. One evening, she handed my father papers at the counter. "Estimates," she said sweetly. I recognized my bank's logo. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the house and felt clarity settle in. Not anger, clarity. At dawn, I went for a run, cold air steadying my thoughts. Linda didn't want help. She wanted control, and my father was allowing it. When I returned, Linda smiled like nothing was wrong. "Morning?" she asked. "Sleep well?" "Fine," I said. "You've been quiet lately." "I've been listening." Her smile flickered. That afternoon, I called legal assistance. I explained the situation without names. The officer listened and asked one question. Had I authorized any of it? No. "Then you're right to be concerned." Not dramatic, not paranoid, validated. I decided then. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't plead. I would prepare. That evening, Linda tried once more. "Everything we do is for this family," she said, touching my arm. "My money isn't," I replied. Her hand dropped. She said nothing else, but I felt the shift. I was no longer available to be managed. The truth didn't appear all at once. It came in pieces. A forwarded letter arrived from my father's address, opened and resealed poorly. Inside was a notice from a credit company thanking my father for an inquiry about balance transfers and authorized users on an account in my name. I sat on my bunk holding the letter, not afraid, but certain. I called the number immediately. The representative confirmed it. Someone using my information had requested access options, not successfully, but intentionally. "Is there a reason someone would think they're allowed to do that?" she asked. I thought of Linda's touch, my father's silence.
The word family was used like a key. "No," I said, "there isn't." That same afternoon, I locked everything down. New passwords, new security questions, verbal passcodes. I placed alerts on all my accounts for increased monitoring. The woman on the phone guided me step by step, her tone calm and steady. "You did the right thing by calling early," she said before ending the call. Early. That word stayed with me because it meant things could have gone much further if I hadn't acted. The next piece came together during my next visit home. I was looking for an old notebook my mother used to keep. Nothing important, just something familiar. I checked the hallway closet, then the drawer beneath the phone. Finally, I opened the small cabinet in the study. That's where I found the folder. It wasn't hidden, that was the problem. It sat openly on the middle shelf between household manuals and tax returns, labeled neatly, planning. Inside were printed emails, budget drafts, loan projections, and an asset list. My assets. My name appeared again and again at the top of pages I had never seen. Notes in the margins mentioned temporary transfers, family use, eventual consolidation. My throat tightened. I stood there holding the folder, listening to Linda move around the kitchen, plates clinking, water running, the ordinary sounds of a house that no longer felt like one. One page stopped me completely. A handwritten note was folded behind a spreadsheet. She won't say no forever. Once she understands responsibility, she'll see it's better this way. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. I closed the folder carefully, put it back exactly where it was, and left the study without a sound. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. At dinner, Linda talked about rising costs, inflation, and uncertainty. She spoke with the rhythm of someone laying groundwork, not asking permission. My father nodded along. I watched them and thought about how often I had defended his silence, told myself he was tired, grieving, trying to keep peace. I realized then that peace had a price, and I was the one expected to pay it. Later that evening, my father knocked on my door. He stood awkwardly, hands in his pockets. "Your stepmother mentioned you seemed distant," he said. I found the folder. He stiffened. "You went through our things." I recognized my name on plans I didn't make. He exhaled. "She was just thinking ahead." "For who?" "She worries about the house, about us." "And me?" He looked away. That was my answer. After he left, I sat on the bed and let the truth settle. Not anger, not grief, clarity. My father wasn't being manipulated. He was involved. The next morning, I called the fraud department again. This time, I spoke plainly. I described the letters, the inquiries, the documents, the handwritten note. The tone on the line changed immediately. "Do not confront them," the agent said. "Keep documenting. We'll open a file." A file sounded small, but it carried weight. By the time I returned to base, I had a system. I scanned documents, photographed notes, saved emails, logged conversations with dates, times, and exact wording. I stored everything in 2 secure locations. I studied the laws tied to my accounts and location. The military had trained me to plan for contingencies, so I did. Linda noticed the shift before my father did. "You've been very busy lately," she said on a call. "I'm focused," I replied. "That's good," she said. "We all have to do our part." I ended the call and logged her words. The final piece arrived by accident, an email from a loan officer sent to me instead of my father. It included an attachment, a draft application listing expected future income, mine. That's when I knew this wasn't confusion, it was a plan. That night I barely slept. I thought about my mother, how carefully she labeled everything, how she used to say preparation was a form of love. By morning, resolve replaced grief. I didn't change my behavior right away. That would have raised alarms. People who assume control panic when they sense resistance. So I stayed polite, I answered calls, returned messages, smiled during video chats. I sounded engaged, but revealed nothing. Internally, I was building something precise. I opened a new account at a different bank and redirected my deposits. I froze my credit. I set alerts everywhere. I saved every confirmation email in a folder labeled Evidence. I met with legal assistance again, this time with names and documents. When I finished, the officer said calmly, "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is attempted financial exploitation." Hearing it stated plainly removed the last doubt. That night, I called the fraud unit again and learned exactly what documentation mattered. While I was on the call, Linda messaged me, "Just checking in. Your dad's been stressed. We're worried about you." I saved it. The next step was the hardest. I let them think it was working. I mentioned being overwhelmed. I let uncertainty slip into my voice. Linda responded immediately. "You don't have to do this alone. Families share burdens." "I know. I just don't know where to start." Her voice softened. "Your father can help. We both can." She believed she had won. Over the following weeks, she pushed carefully. Suggestions, forms, comments about centralizing everything. Each attempt went into my file. My father stayed silent. That silence became evidence. I chose the setting carefully. A family dinner, neutral ground, witnesses close enough to matter. I didn't want a scene. I wanted clarity. That evening, Linda was confident, talking about the future and stability. During dessert, she said, "We've been thinking it might be time to formalize some things." "What things?" I asked. "Safeguards." "For whom?" "For all of us." "I've already safeguarded my accounts," I said. Her smile slipped. "I've spoken to my bank and legal assistants." The table went silent. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Because someone tried to access my finances without authorization." "That sounds dramatic," she said lightly. "It's documented." I turned to my father. "I warned you." "We were just trying to help," he said. "You were deciding for me. That's different." "I'm not overreacting. I'm prepared." After dinner, Linda confronted me in the kitchen. "You're turning this into something ugly." I said, "It already was. I just stopped pretending." She looked at me differently then. Not angry, but cautious. She understood what my father hadn't. I wasn't emotional. I was methodical. And methodical people don't stop once they start. The dinner had been her idea, framed as reconciliation. She invited extended family and friends. She called it reconnecting. I agreed immediately, which surprised her. The house was set carefully that night, candles placed just right. Compliments flowed. Someone praised my service. Linda seized the moment. "We're very grateful," she said. "Not many families have that kind of security." Dinner continued. During dessert, my aunt asked about my future. Linda added, "With that income, she has so many options." "What options?" I asked. She mentioned investing and helping family. I placed a slim envelope on the table. "A summary," I said, "of recent activity connected to my finances." Linda laughed nervously. "Is this really the time?" "It is," I replied. I explained calmly. Multiple unauthorized attempts, repeated inquiries, draft applications. The room grew still. "That must be a mistake," Linda said. "Not repeatedly," I replied. My father suggested talking later. "I'm comfortable discussing it now, since it's already been mentioned publicly." Linda's jaw tightened.
"I've opened a file," I continued, "with the fraud department, and I've consulted legal assistance." That was the shift, the moment the atmosphere changed. Linda's hand shook slightly as she reached for her water glass. She took one sip, then another, her smile now stiff. "This is unnecessary," she said. "We're family." "That's exactly why it matters," I replied. No one spoke. The candles flickered softly. I turned to my father. "I warned you. I set a boundary. It was crossed." He stared down at his plate. "I'm not accusing anyone tonight," I said. "I'm informing you. There will be a meeting soon with professionals. We'll discuss next steps." Linda leaned back, her composure slipping just enough to show calculation beneath it. "You're threatening us." "No," I said. "I'm giving you clarity."
The rest of the dinner moved forward in a fog. Conversations restarted, forced and awkward. People avoided my eyes. When guests finally left, Linda hugged them tightly, her smile fixed in place. To anyone watching, the evening looked successful. After the last car pulled away, Linda turned on me. "You humiliated me," she hissed. "I told the truth," I said. "You planned this." "Yes." My father stood between us, shoulders slumped. "Can we just calm down?" he said. "I am calm. That's the point." Linda laughed, sharp and brittle. "You think you've won something. I think you understand now, and that's enough for tonight." She looked at the envelope still on the table. "What's in it?" "You'll see," I said, "at the meeting." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. For the first time, she looked unsure. That night, I slept better than I had in months, because once leverage is exposed, it stops working, and Linda knew it. The meeting was set on 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, not at the house, not at a cafe, neutral ground, an office with glass walls and neutral art, designed to keep emotion from settling in. I chose it deliberately. Emotions blur edges. Paper sharpens them. My father arrived first. He looked older than he had a week earlier, shoulders hunched, tie pulled too tight as if to remind himself he still controlled something. He nodded when he saw me, stiff and uncertain. Linda arrived 3 minutes late. She wore a dark blazer and heels that clicked sharply with each step, announcing her presence like she still believed this was a stage. She smiled at everyone except me. We sat. The mediator introduced herself, then my attorney, quiet, precise, speaking only when necessary. I noticed Linda watching her hands instead of her face. That mattered. "Let's begin," the mediator said. I didn't speak first. Linda did. "This is all very dramatic," she said lightly. "We're here because of a misunderstanding." My attorney slid a folder across the table. "It's documented." Linda's smile tightened. We started with facts, timeline, dates, access attempts, unauthorized inquiries, draft applications, the handwritten note, collateral listing expected future income, mine. Everything was presented calmly, no accusations, no raised voices. My father stared straight ahead. Linda shifted in her chair. "This doesn't prove intent," she said. "Do families plan for other people's money?" my attorney asked. Silence. The mediator turned to me. "What outcome are you seeking?" I took a breath. First, formal acknowledgement that my finances are mine alone. No shared access, no inquiries, no planning without my written consent. Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. Second, I continued, a signed statement confirming any prior attempts were unauthorized. My father flinched. Third, a commitment that my name, income, and future earnings won't be used in any financial context going forward. "And if we don't agree?" Linda asked. "Then the fraud file moves forward," I said. The room went quiet. "You'd do that to us?" my father asked. "I already did it to protect myself," I replied. The mediator offered alternatives, settlement, boundaries. "That's what I'm offering," I said. "You're enjoying this," Linda said. "No," I replied. "I'm ending it." She looked at my father. "You're going to let her do this?" He hesitated. That hesitation said everything. My attorney placed another document on the table. "These are the terms." "This limits us," Linda said sharply. "It protects me." "And family?" "Family doesn't require access to my accounts." My father spoke quietly. "Linda, maybe we should sign." Her head snapped toward him. "After everything I've done for you!" "I'm choosing to stop this from getting worse," he said.
The mediator slid the pen forward. My father signed first. The sound felt louder than it should have. Linda stared at the page, then signed with a sharp stroke. Outside, the air felt clear. Not relief, completion. The silence afterwards was different, clean, unoccupied. I returned to base 2 days later. My father sent one short message. "I hope you're okay." I didn't respond. Hope without accountability was just avoidance. Linda didn't reach out at all. Later, I heard she was telling people I'd become cold. I let her keep that story. What surprised me was how little I missed the house. The version I missed hadn't existed since my mother died. On my first free weekend, I visited the cemetery. I told my mother the truth. I handled it. I didn't let them take what wasn't theirs. I thought about who I'd been back then, quiet, willing to disappear. I learned how to say no and mean it. Life settled into a new rhythm. My finances stayed where they belonged. The fraud file closed. The evidence folder stayed stored, unused but ready. Months later, my father left a voicemail. "I should have protected you. I didn't. I'm sorry." I listened twice, then archived it. Apologies acknowledged damage. They didn't repair trust. The military gave me structure. My mother gave me values. This experience gave me boundaries. Not walls, clear lines. I didn't gain satisfaction. I gained ownership of my life. Respect didn't require permission. And family wasn't defined by access. It was defined by care. If this story resonated with you, share where you're watching from or what stayed with you. We share stories like this every day. Subscribe and stay with us. Let's keep moving forward together.